suppose the Vatican would be willing to give for the Pope's name? Rogers Cadenhill wanted an answer to that very question. After the death of Pope John Paul in 2005, this self-described domain hoarder quickly registered the name www.benedict16.com before the new Pope's name was announced. Cadenhead secured this name before Rome knew that they needed it. See, the right domain name can prove to be rather lucrative. Another name, www.popebenedict16.com, surpassed $16,000 on eBay. Cadenhead, however, didn't want any money. As a Catholic himself, he's happy for the church to own the name. He said, I'm going to try and avoid angering 1.1 billion Catholics around the world and my grandmother, he said. But he did want something in return. In exchange, Cadenhead sought and asked for three things. Number one of those cool Pope hats. Number two, a free stay at the Vatican Hotel. And number three, complete absolution, no questions asked, for the third week of March 1987. I don't know about you, but kind of makes you wonder what happened that week, doesn't it? Now you might be wondering, what in the world am I telling you this for? Because it might remind you of a week of your own. You see, most of us have one, or more. A folly-filled summer, a month off track, days where we kind of went wild. If a box of tapes existed documenting every second of your life, just let that sink in for a moment. Which tapes would you want to burn? Make sure you never saw the light of day. I mean, is there a season in your life when you indulge or imbibe or inhaled? You see, one person in the Old Testament who certainly had that week of March 1987 was King David. I mean, could a collapse be more colossal than his? Most of you are familiar with his story. At the time of the year when kings normally go off to war, he decided to stay behind. He sent Joab, his commanding general, off to battle. Stayed behind the city. When he got up from his afternoon nap, wandering around his palace, he looked out over the city and happened to notice this attractive woman bathing. Well, he sends for the lady, brings her to his bedroom, and he impregnates Bathsheba. And when the word comes out, gets back to him that she's now pregnant, he says, well, I can't have this. I better bring her husband back from the front line so that he can lie with his wife and, everything will be fine. And we'll cover this up very nicely. But, of course, Uriah happened to be an honorable man. He refused to sleep with his wife. Instead, he slept outside of the king's doorway, so to speak, because he said, look, all of the other men are out in the field, in battle, sleeping on the ground. How could I possibly go home to my wife? And he's like, oh, great, I got somebody that's honorable. So he said, well, maybe I can get him drunk. So the next day, he invites Uriah to a party at the palace, gets him drunk, hoping that now he'll surely go home, but no, of course not. He stays behind the king's gate. David's beside himself. What can I do? So he sends letters with Uriah back to Joab, the commanding general, basically with instructions for his own death. Because these instructions, which were for Joab's eyes only, basically said, put Uriah where the fiercest warriors are, and then withdraw your troops, so that he'll surely be killed by the enemy. In a week's time, or thereabouts, adultery by sleeping with another man's wife, impregnates her, then has her husband killed. Following that, following his death, he marries her. She bears his child. And the cover-up seems to be complete. And to the casual observer, it would appear that everything is okay, that there's no cause for concern. I mean, David has a new wife, a happy life, and all seems well on the throne. But all is not well in David's heart. Guilt was simmering just below the surface. In fact, he would later describe this season of his secret sin in very graphic terms in Psalm chapter 32, verses 3 and 4. He said, "When I kept it all inside, my bones turned to powder. My words became day-long groans. The pressure never let up. All the juices of my life dried up." David's soul at that season of his life resembled a Canadian elm tree in winter. Barren, fruitless, shrouded in gray. His heart hangs unstrung. His hope hibernates. The guy who had gotten everything that he ever wanted is a walking wreck. His third week of March stalks him like a pack of hungry wolves. He cannot escape it. Why? Because God keeps bringing it up over and over and over again. Underline the last verse of 2 Samuel chapter 11. The very last phrase of that verse says this: "The thing that David had done displeased the Lord." With those words, the narrator introduces a new character into the drama of David and Bathsheba: God. Thus far, he's been absent from the text, unmentioned in the story. When David seduces Bathsheba, no mention of God. When David plots to have her husband killed, no mention of God. When Uriah is buried, no mention of God. When he takes Bathsheba as his wife, no mention of God. When the child is born, still no mention of God. God is not spoken about, he's not spoken to, and he does not speak. The first half of verse 27 would lure the reader into a false sense of a happy ending. Bathsheba became David's wife and gave birth to his son. They decorated a nursery. They picked baby names out of the magazine. 9 months pass. Son is born. And we conclude that, boy, David sure dodged a bullet with this one, didn't he? And it would appear that the angels in heaven dropped this story into the file marked, "Boys will be boys." It seems as though God has turned a blind eye. Yet just when we think so, and David hopes so, someone steps from behind the curtain and takes center stage. The thing David had done displeased the Lord. God can be silent no more. The name that's not mentioned until the final verse of chapter 11 dominates all of chapter 12. David, who had been the one who sends out people over and over again, now has to sit on the sidelines, so to speak, while God takes control. So how does God deal with David's secret sin? He sends Nathan to David. Now Nathan is a prophet, a preacher, a White House chaplain of sorts. I mean, the guy deserves a gold medal for just having the courage to go before David in the first place. After all, he knows what happened to Uriah. And David had killed this innocent soldier. What do you think he's going to do with a confrontational preacher? It probably isn't looking too good for Nathan. I can imagine his knees shaking a little bit when he walks into the throne room. But he goes. But I love what he does next, because he doesn't just come right out and say, "David, you really messed up." He doesn't confront him. Instead, he tells him a story. And I love the story that he tells. He starts telling David this story about a poor man. A poor man who had only one sheep to his name. But this wasn't just any sheep. This was a family pet. It slept inside with him every night. It would lick the scraps off his master's plate at the dinner table. The children would carry this lamb around everywhere they went. They loved this little lamb. It was precious to them, to the entire family. And David's like, yeah, I remember. I know what it was like. Do you remember where David was when Samuel came to Jesse's house to anoint David as the next king after King Saul? He was out taking care of sheep. Remember, Samuel shows up at Jesse's house, and he brings his oldest son before Samuel, and Samuel's like, surely this is the Lord's anointed. Strong, handsome, tall. No, not him. Bring the next son out. Samuel looks at him, well, surely this is the Lord's anointed. No, not him either. He goes through every one of Jesse's sons, and God clearly told Samuel, none of these are the one that I've chosen. Finally, Samuel's like, look, Jesse, you got any more sons? He goes, well, there is the youngest. Now, he's out taking care of the sheep. We'll bring him in. We're not going to eat till he gets here. Of course, God reveals to Samuel that this is the one that he's chosen. See, David knew all about sheep. And he didn't come from the wealthiest family, which is indicated by the fact that they didn't have enough money to hire a shepherd themselves. And David, as the youngest, it's like the most menial job. He's the one that's out there taking care of them day in and day out, driving off wild animals, knowing each one by name, having that same kind of almost intimate relationship, so to speak, where he just loves them dearly and watches out for them. So as Nathan tells this story, he is instantly engaged. He's connected with this poor man who has only one sheep to his name. And then the story takes an interesting turn. Nathan continues the story by saying, well, it just so happens that there was this really rich guy that lived nearby where this poor man lived. He had a mansion, many rooms. He had thousands of sheep. And a friend of his from out of town showed up for a visit. And of course, wanting to be a good host, this rich man decides that we need to have a feast. But he doesn't want to spare any of his sheep, so he sends his bodyguards down to the poor farmer, takes that only sheep that he has right out from underneath the roof to slaughter it on barbecue. David's face turns red. The hair on the back of his neck stands up. He grips the arms of his throne in anger, frustration. He's just about ready to go crazy, and he pronounces a verdict without a trial. He says, the man who has done this shall surely die, and he shall restore fourfold for the lamb, because he did this horrible thing and because he had no pity. David never saw it coming. He never saw Nathan erecting the gallows, throwing the rope over the beam. You never felt him tie your hands behind your back or lead you up the steps and stand you squarely over the trap door, did you, David? Only when he squeezed the noose around your neck did you go. Only when Nathan tightened the rope with 4 3-letter words. You are the man. Instead of a red face, it becomes ashen, white. He falls back into his throne. Beads of sweat form on the brow. He makes no defense, yet there's no response. He has nothing to say. God, however, is just clearing his throat. Because through Nathan, he proclaims, I made you king over Israel. I freed you from the fist of Saul. I gave you your master's daughter and other wives to have and to hold. I gave you both Israel and Judah. And if that hadn't been enough, I'd have gladly thrown in much more. So why have you treated the word of God with such brazen contempt, doing this great evil? You murdered Uriah the Hittite, then took his wife as your wife. Worse, you killed him with an Ammonite sword. God's words reflect hurt, not hatred. Bewilderment, not belittlement. Your flock fills the hills. Why rob? Beauty populates your palace. Why take from someone else? Why would the wealthy steal? David has no response. He cannot rationalize or justify his way out of this one. So God levies a sentence. Chapter 12, verses 10 through 12. He said, Now therefore, the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. This is what the Lord says. Out of your own household I am going to bring calamity upon you. Before your very eyes I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you, and he will lie with your wives in broad daylight. You did it in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before all Israel. From that day forward, turmoil and tragedy marked David's family. Even the child of this adultery will die, Nathan said in verse 18, because he must. Surrounding nations now question the holiness of David's God. David has soiled God's reputation, blemished God's honor, and God, who jealously guards his glory, punishes David's public sin in a public fashion. The infant perishes. The king of Israel discovers the harsh truth of Numbers 32:23, where it says, You can be sure that your sin will track you down. What about you? Have you found that to be true in your own life? Does your third week of March 1987 hound you and infect you? See, colossal collapses will never leave us alone. They surface like a boil on the skin. I don't know how many of you have ever had boils before. I used to get them periodically as a kid, and man, I tell you, those can be some of the most painful things, especially when you're mom. Yeah, you know, you're there. Because you have to get that seed out. Squeeze it and press it. I mean, I remember crying out in agony. It was so painful at times. But you couldn't allow the poison to just fester, to spread. You're thinking, wow, thanks for that image. Sorry for being so graphic, but I need to press this point home. If you think my mom was tough, try the hands of God with unresolved sin. Unconfessed sins sit on our hearts like festering boils, poisoning and expanding. And God, with gracious thumbs, applies the pressure. Proverbs 13:15, the way of the transgressor is hard. Job 4:8, those who plow evil and sow trouble reap evil and trouble. God will take your sleep, your peace, your rest. Want to know why? Because He wants to take away your sin. That's why He makes things uncomfortable. That's why He keeps bringing it back to mind over and over again. Can a mom do nothing as toxins invade her child? Can God sit idly by as sin poisons His children? He will not rest until we do what David did. Confess your fault. Confess your sin. 2 Samuel 12:13. David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, the Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. Here's what I find interesting about this. As Nathan was telling the story about the poor shepherd, David sentenced this imaginary sheep stealer in the story to death. God is much more merciful. He put away David's sin. Rather than covering it up, He lifted it up and put it away. In fact, later on, David would write these beautiful words in Psalm 103. 3, verses 12 and 13. He said, "As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him." Those are words of a man who's been forgiven because he confessed his sin. It took him a year. It took a surprise pregnancy, the death of a soldier, the persuasion of a preacher, and the probing and pressing of God. But David's hard heart finally softened, and he confessed, "I have sinned against the Lord." And the beautiful thing about this story, about this colossal collapse, is that God did with his sin what he does for yours and mine. He put it away. As far as the east is from the west. It's time for you to put your third week of March 1987 to rest, if you haven't already done so. So here's what I want you to do today. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot by saying, "Hey, you need to come forward and confess this to the Lord," and whatever it is. I'm just asking you to do. That's what I want you to do with your unresolved or unconfessed sin that you've probably been trying to cover up or keep hidden or keep secret. I want you to do this act today. A simple meeting of three parties. God, you, and your sin. Your memory. Place the mistake before the judgment seat of God and let him condemn it, as Nathan did with David. Let him pardon it. Let him take it away, because he will. And good thing is, you don't even have to have the Pope's name for him to do so. And here's what I want you to do after you do that. I want to encourage you to tell a trusted friend. Because much like David confessed his sin before Nathan, find someone that you can share what you've done and how you found forgiveness. Someone who can help hold you accountable so you don't slip back into that again. So why do you think God chose to allow all this evil to happen in David's life without speaking up? Why was he silent until the child was born? Any thoughts? You see, that's the part of the story that I don't fully understand. Why did God wait so long for this to happen? He could have intervened at any moment. I wonder if that sin had to kind of go through its whole cycle before David would have been ready to humble himself, confess his sin. Or if he would have still tried to compromise and cover it up. I mean, when you think of hidden sins in your own life, do you ever wonder if God will forgive you? Have you ever thought, well, I've sinned so badly, surely he will never use me again? If you've ever thought that, I want you to focus on the first thing David did right after his many months of willful rebellion. Once confronted with his sin, he confessed it. And God removed it. Place the mistake before the judgment seat of God. Let him condemn it. Let him pardon it. Let him put it away. As far as the east is from the west. I don't know what you're struggling with. I don't know if there's some secret struggle that you have and you just try to keep buried all the time. I don't know if there's something that's still in the back of your mind that's saying, I've never really resolved that. But I need to. Come clean before the Lord. Tell somebody about it that you trust. It can help hold you accountable. Maybe it's a secret addiction. I don't know. God surely knows. David, and ate away at it. Oh my goodness. It's a walking wreck. Don't carry it any longer. Submit your life to God.